I don't want to have just another talk on cryptocurrencies and digital assets and traditional talk on conversion to growth of stablecoin and that kind of stuff, because I think that there are a lot of experts in this field, a lot of people that I know, including our own Ryan Grace and Edward Woodford and people that we work with that are just brilliant in the space of digital assets. And so I'm not going to try to compete with that at all.
Sure. Rational.
I think the interesting topic for us to talk about is how a lot of things that are currently happening in the digital asset / stablecoin space are creating a lot of questions about the integrity of the space, because it starts at the top. There are an incredible number of conflicts when the leader of the free world and his family are creating companies with obvious conflicts where the only defense is, yes, I'm involved, but my kids are managing the trust, so therefore it's okay. But in the interim, I will fire all the non-friendly regulators, and I will put regulators in place, or no regulators, or friendly regulators that are also involved in the same projects that can profit from the same projects. So in other words, the grift is on. It's a major league. It's a big time conflict on every ethics. I would say on a criminal level, on an ethics level, on a political level, business, you name it. The amount of questions and the entire integrity. The thing that always scared people about crypto was, all right, crypto's, there's no transparency. Even though it's decentralized, there's essentially no real transparency, and therefore drug dealers and money launderers and every criminal in the world can flourish in this space. Nobody ever thought that it would be the president of the United States that would make the most money in the crypto space from doing things that were conflicted. And I think what you're seeing right now, and there was a really interesting discussion in the Wall Street Journal last week. There was a really interesting discussion on cable news, on CNBC. They did a whole expose on Bloomberg, and everybody's starting to break this thing wide open, along with the House Ethics Committee, along with 2 or 3 ethic watchdog groups that are all suggesting that the level of corruption, the level of greed has gotten a little bit out of hand. And there's lots of different examples, and we can get into them today here with the Trump meme coin, the Melania's meme coin, the amount of money that was made by such a few individuals, like I think 58 individuals made over $10 million, and 764,000 individuals lost money in their wallet. Okay, I mean, that's just for starters. The Trump Family Trust picking up $350 million in trading fees. The way the smart contract was written and the way this coin was developed is every time somebody trades it, the Trump Family Trust gets to scrape a transaction fee off the top. So they've scraped $350 million off the top just on trading fees alone, not to mention that they still own 80% of the coins that have not even entered into circulation. And then there's the other side of it, which it continues further down the road, which I want to just throw this out there and then we can talk about it, of the current $2 billion Saudi investment from a questionable Saudi firm that is going to be investing $2 billion into buying a stake in Binance and using the Trump, which I think it's USD1, I think that's what it is, which is the Trump stablecoin that they created as a kind of in a non-bidding process to select that stablecoin to be used, which means massive amount of fees that also go back to that same organization because of the use of the $2 billion of stablecoin, which is all his kids, Don Jr., whatever, that's running that program. And in return for that, it looks like they then the Trump family was granted the rights to build, I don't know, whatever, $5 or $10 billion real estate project in I think it's in the United Arab Republics, but yeah, I mean, you can in, let's see, UAE. It was just going off the top of my head, but it was I think it's a huge residential complex, whatever. It's a couple $1 billion, but almost impossible to get permits and all that stuff for U.S. companies, but they just gave it to them. So anyway, the whole circle comes around, but you can see what's happening here. There's hundreds of millions and billions of dollars in conflicted fees, grifts, whatever you want to call it, for the president, his kids, and his wife, all in different accounts, all taking advantage of small investors or just ridiculously worthless coins that were created solely for the purpose of grifting.
And so there's sort of two topics here, I think, really, which is one is the act of efficiently monetizing the office of the presidency of the United States, which I think the Trump family is doing at this point, they're off to a really good start in terms of monetizing the presidency. Now, I would argue Barack Obama did a really good job monetizing the presidency. Bill Clinton kind of invented the idea of monetizing the presidency. And I'm sure if crypto existed when in the era of Obama and Clinton, they might be perfectly happy. Instead of selling books or selling speeches or creating nonprofits or other ways to take backdoor money, the technology has just changed to allow the president now to take extraordinary amounts of backdoor money via crypto, as opposed to Pelosi's insider trading or Hillary Clinton's speaking fees or Barack Obama's book sales. I mean, I think part of the reason why Trump is the president is because people are so disillusioned with the conflict of interest of people becoming president of the United States as a way to become a multi-millionaire by monetizing the power of that office via speaking fees, nonprofits, books, and now obviously a crypto coin. So I don't necessarily blame the Trump family for efficiently using technology to take as much money for themselves as humanly possible. I mean, it's obviously disgusting, but I would argue it's equally disgusting for a litany of prior presidents from both parties who have been working to optimize the monetization of the office of the presidency, going back to Bill and Hillary. The other issue is the credibility of the crypto market as a financial domain that is compromised by people that use it to effectively steal money with meme coins. Whether it's the Trump family scamming everybody with their meme coin, or the Hawk-Tuah girl scamming everybody with her meme coin, or whatever. I mean, there seems to be a never-ending list of crypto scams, which then kind of brings up the major issue where I think you and I agree, which is long-term, the credibility of the financial markets, the credibility of the capital markets, the credibility of the investment markets, and ultimately the credibility of the currency markets, and beyond that, the credibility of the cryptocurrency markets. Every time that someone with extreme power, like the President of the United States, compromises that, it diminishes the long-term value of the asset class, whether it's the cryptocurrency or the US dollar or whatever it is. And so, on the one hand, I think that anybody that's using cryptocurrency in a nefarious or deceptive or extraction as a way to extract money, as a scam, basically, is shame on them. And shame and quadruple shame on the President of the United States for using crypto as a scam mechanism and basically endorsing every scammer all the way down the line and renovating the regulators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I also do honestly see the Trump scamming and self-enrichment as the logical next step in a line of presidents of the United States, going back to Bill and Hillary Clinton through George W. Bush. George W. Bush and his buddies created a company that sells the equipment to the TSA, like the scatter machine that you have to walk through at the airport. They're like, we'll make a company that sells. Well, first we'll make a law that everybody has to go through this crazy apparatus at every airport, and then we'll make a company that sells that apparatus, and we'll make a government contract that gives our company a multi-billion-dollar contract to supply all the machines for all the airports. Is that any different? How is that different than selling? How is that different than? Or I'll pay Hillary Clinton $1 million for a 10-minute speech at Goldman Sachs, which she doesn't even. I don't even care if she shows up to make the speech, as long as she just takes the money and gives us what we want. I just look at this as the latest. Maybe it's the most egregious. It's more money. It's more outrageous. But I would say that the difference in my mind is Hillary Clinton doesn't compromise the entire speaking market that the speaking market in general, that the market for speeches is not viewed as a purely corrupt thing. So I want to pay for a speech for Tom Sosnoff to come speak to 500 high school kids to say something inspirational. I want to pay Dylan Radigan 10 or 20 grand to come say something about, whatever, up to, whoever, Meryl Streep, the actress, will pay her $500,000 and she'll do. So I don't think Hillary Clinton, her speaking scams didn't, in my opinion, compromise the speaking market. People buying millions of Barack Obama's books, even if it was 500. So one rich person buys 500,000 books and puts them in a warehouse just as a way to transfer a huge pile of money to Barack Obama. Well, that doesn't compromise the publishing market. It just alienates people because they're like, well, hang on, these people are just trying to make money by being president. In this case, I do think that it doesn't just expose the Trump family as what they are, which everybody knows, which is a bunch of scammers and con artists. But that's been what they've been doing. That's known for 60 years. I mean, that's not a new piece of information. It's just optimized because of the power and technology now. But I do think it brings up an interesting question, which is what is the impact on the credibility of the non-Bitcoin cryptocurrencies? Basically where I end up with all this is, we can talk about the first part of this, obviously, but I also do wonder if where we're headed on the crypto side is to a world where the only cryptocurrency people trust is Bitcoin. And that everything that's not Bitcoin is perceived to be an obvious scam.
Well, the problem with it is that if you pay Ben Bernanke $5 million to give a speech, all right? You're Citadel and you pay Ben Bernanke $5 million to work for you for a year, and he gives one speech and you cut him a check for $5 million for whatever that means. Who cares? Okay? I don't care. If you pay Hillary Clinton, or I remember once years ago, we paid Clinton and Bush together to speak at an event we did in Florida back after TD had bought us, and we paid them, I remember $350,000. I don't remember what year it was. I think it was 2000. It had to be, Obama had to be president then, so it had to be 2000 and let's say 8 or something like that, 2009. And I think we paid them $350,000, $375,000 for the two of them, both of them. Both made a little under $200,000, which would seem cheap by today's standards. But at the time, I thought it was a crazy amount of money. But they're both ex-presidents. They both spoke for about 45 minutes to an hour. To get two ex-presidents in a room together was pretty impressive. And I don't think, even if that number had been $500,000 or $1 million each, I don't think, like you said, that has any impact on the integrity of the speaking circuit, which I don't even know if that has integrity. I don't know if that has
integrity, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't know if that in any way hurts the economy. Private event, that kind of stuff. Just like paying Bernanke $5 million. I really don't care what they pay Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton or anybody else. Or Bush or anybody or any politician or any Fed governor. You're talking about people that can committed to public service that generally, work for next to nothing. And at the end of it, that's how they make their money. I'm okay with that. I think it's completely different. And we're talking about a completely different ballgame when you have, and also remember, those are all those cases, that examples you gave were post-presidency. Okay.
Not entirely. Hillary Clinton was running for president and taking big speaking fees before she ran for president.
Okay.
And Barack Obama, while he was president, was selling books for 100,000 lots to individuals who was clearly not going to read them.
I don't know anything. I don't know enough about that, but let's just say most of these speaking things, I don't know about the books, but most of the speaking things and most books, like Reagan, when he did his book and everything, was after the presidency. Most are after the presidency, when they open a library, whatever they do. I feel like that's okay, because that's part of, for everyone. I don't care if it's Republican, Democrat, whatever it is. I feel like that's okay. That's part of, that's what you get. If you're president of the United States, you want to monetize it afterwards, go right ahead. We don't pay you a lot of money. You're the leader of the free world. You're entitled to monetize that afterwards. I don't really care. When you're a sitting president and you are jeopardizing, there's a difference between monetizing what your role was and having an ethical conflict to a sitting president that is bringing into question the entire integrity of an asset class. And I don't see how those two can be compared. They're not the same thing. I just don't see them. I don't see them as the same thing at all.
But hasn't that asset wasn't the integrity? First of all, I would say, wasn't the integrity of that asset class already in question before Trump did this?
And the answer is yes. And the people that brought those assets, because there were regulators, CZ, who was the founder and CEO of Binance, went to jail. Sam Bankman-Fried went to jail. Everybody else got shut down. So the answer is yes, there was a regulatory body. All these groups got indicted, shut down, banned from business, all that kind of stuff. That's all gone now. Essentially, it's very different when you say, you know what, we're going to play a game, but before we play the game, we're going to fire all the referees. And now we're going to make the rules. And there's a big prize at the end. But there are rules because there's no referees anymore. And everybody that had a problem, all those problems are thrown away because they're all gone. All the cases are dropped. There are no ethics anymore. There's no regulatory boundaries right now. So first you fire all the regulators, and then you do all this. I don't see how it's comparing apples to apples.
I mean, again, I was thinking more specifically about Obama selling books while he's the president, not after.
Yeah, but Obama's selling books while he's the president.
And Hillary Clinton selling speeches while she's preparing to run for president.
Okay, I don't understand how that either of those two things, and if it was Reagan or if it was anybody else, I don't understand how those things, you can, if you have an ethical question with that based on conflict, fine, you can argue it out. But I don't see how that really damages the integrity of the presidency and or any kind of business associated.
Well, I would say it damages the integrity of the presidency because it creates the appearance that the access to the president and policy is accessible to those who contribute millions of dollars, which is what the Trump situation is. You give the Trump family millions of dollars, the Trump family gives you a time, attention, and policy preference. You give Barack Obama millions of dollars.
You give the Trump family
Barack Obama
hundreds.
Gives you preferable policies.
There's a big difference.
Sorry?
You give the Trump family hundreds of millions of dollars, and you get your TikTok back. You give the Trump family hundreds of millions of dollars, you get your electric cars back, and everything else. You give the Trump family hundreds of millions of dollars, you get to launch your own meme coin or stable coin. Yes, that is the case. And so this is a very different world. This is something we've never seen.
But don't you think it's an extension of the prior corruption of the presidency? It's just an extreme example.
You
give Hunter Biden money and Joe Biden does favors for you. You know, I'm not saying this is not the worst example that I've ever seen in my life. I'm just saying I actually believe one of the reasons people like Trump as a president was that people were so disgusted by the previous president's sort of sanctimony or attempting to appear to be, ethical when they're selling. Nancy Pelosi's doing her thing, and George W.'s doing it. I mean, they're relatively minor things. I'm not saying they're not lesser offenses, but it's like, okay, you want to sell the presidency? I'll show you how to sell the presidency.
So you think
Ain't nobody's
Nancy
a con
Pelosi
man like me? That come from Queens, and I've been running scams in New York City since I was born.
So you think Nancy Pelosi buying stock in NVIDIA, okay, is the same thing as Trump scraping a certain percentage off every stablecoin transaction with his coin? That you think that's the same thing?
I believe it's a slippery slope. I believe that
I believe that is
once the ethics of FDR were breached and Eisenhower were breached, we've been on a slow slide through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts down the line where everybody's like, whatever, you make a little, you get a little, nobody gets hurt, come on, nobody even knows what's the problem. It's you and me, we're fine, blah, blah, blah.
I will give you a different example.
Next thing you got a crypto kingpin who's the president of the United States running the world's biggest crypto scam.
You are comparing apples and oranges. I will give you the example that needs to be in place here. If Nancy Pelosi wants to go out and buy $5 million worth of NVIDIA and Apple and whatever else, go do it. I could care less. If Trump and all the Trump family, the kids, the wife, everybody wants to go out and buy $50 million worth of Bitcoin, go right the freak ahead. Okay, I would have zero issue with that.
What about this? What if the Trump family wants to short the S&P before they announce global tariffs? And then what if they want to get long the S&P before they announce the relief of those tariffs? I think they're probably doing that too.
That is completely different. That is criminal because that is misuse, okay, of material non-public information. That is criminal by definition. But if the Trump family wanted to go out and buy $50 million worth of Bitcoin, go right ahead. I could care less. If they wanted to go out and buy $50 million worth of NVIDIA, I could care less. Okay? This is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is essentially, creating either a worthless meme coin and ripping off hundreds of thousands of individual investors, or creating your own stable coin and raking, a percent of every single transaction off both the crypto coins and the stable coins. That is completely different. Because the difference is riskless. The difference is one has risk. If you're going to take risk, I'm fine with that. Nobody would have bitched at all about anything Nancy Pelosi did if she bought anything when the market went down in April and she lost 50% of everything she had. Who cares? Nobody bitched about that. Okay, as long as you're taking principal risk, then I don't care. And I wouldn't care for Trump either. You want to go out and buy $50 million or $100 million worth of Bitcoin or Ethereum, whatever it is, go right the frick ahead. But when you want to create your own worthless coin by putting up no money at all and then promoting it, okay, you're no different than the Hawk Tuah girl. Except she's not president of the United States. So she's in trouble and she'll never see her face again. But Trump's no better than the Hawk Tuah girl, okay? His wife is no better than Hawk Tuah 2. His kids, no better than Hawk Tuah 3. That's all it is.
Agreed.
And so don't compare the same thing. If any of them want to go out and
the
actually...
Hawk Tuah scheme is the easiest way to make money now.
But if you want to go out and you take principal risk, I got no problem with what you're doing.
But am I taking principal risk when when one donor buys 500,000 books about how I like to color my coloring books when I'm Barack Obama and I'm the president and I got to buy the book and now all of a sudden one person is throwing a bunch of money in my bank account to stick 500,000 copies of books in a warehouse in New Jersey somewhere.
You're talking about something. I don't even know anything about that. This is
what I give Hunter Biden however many dollars so that the big man can take care of me on the back end with the tax thing or the whatever thing it is.
Listen.
I'm not saying this is not much. This is worse. This is the worst I've ever seen. I'm not diminishing the abominable nature of this.
There's a big difference between.
I'm just saying this is just a technology. This is an AI for scamming.
There's a big difference between selling 1 million Barack Obama books, which I don't even know if that's the case. But there's a big difference.
What about paying off Hunter Biden with a little side money for the big man?
Or paying off Hunter Biden with a couple $1 million. Then
or buying Hunter Biden's artwork out of his Malibu studio.
Fine. So big deal. And then you're going to compare that to taking a few $200 million checks to save TikTok?
Same thing, just bigger.
No, it's not. It is
same thing, just bigger. The Trumps are just better at it. The Trumps are they're just better at it.
The stakes have gotten bigger.
Fair.
The stakes, but to rationalize or to justify something, you're basically saying, well, that murder wasn't as good. They're better murderers than this guy was.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is that I believe the electorate was so alienated by the culture of scamming and grifting in the political class that they're like, oh, we're going to give you the world's biggest con artist.
Okay, well, you're trying to rationalize. You're trying to rationalize something. You're trying to rationalize the Trump behavior because of something that you think happened, 10 or 15 years ago during Obama's term. That's ridiculous. Let's talk about it right now.
I mean,
how it has impact.
Joe Biden was president a year ago.
Okay,
Hunter
fine.
Biden was taking money a year ago.
Do you think Joe Biden took money?
No, I think his children took money the same as Trump. Trump's kids take. That's why people have kids.
That's ridiculous. But I'll even give you. I'll take Trump's kids out of the equation. Okay, I'll take his kids out of the equation. Do you think Joe and Jill Biden stole as much money as Trump and Melania?
No, I don't. They're not that skillful. They're not.
Maybe they're ethical. Maybe they.
No, they're not ethical. That is ridiculous.
Oh my God. Maybe you're ridiculous. Your argument is ridiculous. You're trying to rationalize this guy's behavior. You're trying to justify the behavior or somehow allow it.
I think this behavior is despicable, but I believe that Mr. Biden and Mr. Obama and Mr. Bush and Donald Trump.
You could think it's
all
despicable.
And I believe
you can go back as far as you want in history. You can go back to every president and find something, I'm sure. But that doesn't allow us to approve of or not be pissed off or to in any way justify what's happening right now. The integrity of our markets is at stake. Our business and what we do now, we work so hard sitting here every freaking day to say, hey, you know what? This is a level playing field.
So this is, because to me, this is this is a very interesting question. Do you believe corrupting the integrity of the presidency, which Trump is masterfully doing, but I believe also, as you know, I believe prior office holders have also done so, is more damaging to the average human? In other words, what do you think let's assume that the integrity of the financial markets is being compromised. It is. We know it is. It's why the dollar is lower. It's why these meme coins, you got Trump is hawk to a 1, and then you got Trump kids, and you got Melania. They're hawk to a 1, 2, 3, these people. It's a joke, okay? But do you believe compromising the integrity of the crypto market or compromising the integrity of the financial market versus compromising the integrity of the political office of the presidency? Can you differentiate between that integrity in terms of which one represents the greatest risk for you and me and the average American? Is it in other words, because what I'm hearing you say is, listen, it's one thing if Barack Obama or Joe Biden or George Bush or Bill Clinton wants to compromise the office of the presidency, but at least they didn't compromise the financial markets. Now, Trump is compromising the presidency to the maximum, 100 times more than anybody that's come before. But he's also compromising the financial markets, which other presidents have never done. Other presidents have never stepped in and said, I'm going to switch the regulators. I'm going to change the rules. I'm going to launch my own stable coins. I'm going to have my own securities. And then I'll monetize my own securities and I won't regulate any. I mean, this is definitely some next level stuff.
And it's probably just begun. Wait till you have to go to a Trump school to get a high school degree. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't even think you're giving this enough. I don't even think you're, I don't think you're giving this any of the concern. What we're seeing here is it's way
what
past.
I'm hearing is it's one thing you're what I'm, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing is that you're okay to compromise the office of the presidency.
I'm not okay.
As long as you don't compromise the markets. As long as you don't compromise the markets.
I am not okay to compromise the office of the presidency, and I'm not okay to compromise the markets. But there has always been a Chinese wall between the two. At least there's been, I would think, some respect for the independence of the markets. Every single one of those walls is taken down. We've gone to a very different type of leadership, almost, it's the wannabe king / dictator. But that said, we were in, I think, to say that I'm okay with compromising the office of the presidency, that's ridiculous, because I'm not. I'm saying
you don't mind a little book selling, a little speech making.
I'm saying that you're sitting here going, getting paid to give a speech or getting paid to sell a book, whether it's after whatever. I mean, I think that's a ridiculous comparison. I don't think it's the same thing.
Okay.
I don't see that.
Maybe meme coins should not exist for anybody. I mean, because meme coins, by definition, are a way for someone with a social currency to monetize their social currency in a way that 100% of the time causes whoever purchases the coin to lose their money. I mean, you might as well just buy a souvenir. Like you can buy a refrigerator magnet is worth more than a meme coin. At least then you get a magnet.
The comparison that you're trying to make for me, I was trying to think of a good analogy, but I have one. Comparison that you're trying to make is that President A walks into McDonald's and he buys a meal, and he's not allowed a free refill, but he takes a free refill. Okay, that's President A. Okay, wasn't supposed to take a free refill, takes a free refill. All right, not the end of the world. President B goes in and robs the McDonald's at gunpoint. Okay, that's the situation, the comparison that we're dealing with right now. Okay, and so you're trying to say that they're the same thing, but I don't think they're the same thing at all.
Well, I mean, your metaphor is incorrect.
I thought it was pretty good, actually.
I like it. I enjoyed it. I'm not saying it wasn't entertaining and it was nice. I guess well presented.
I think,
but I'm not sure that it's applicable.
You can't regulate. Unfortunately, the problem is that when you talk about regulating meme coins, it's challenging, but all of the discussions about the validity of meme coins and value and everything else kind of goes out the window when the leader of the free world is launching meme coins. I mean, there's a lot more to this.
I agree.
If you're one of the top, 25 or 50 holders, then you get to go to dinner. It's like there's all these things. I mean, the level of grift here is just, it's so ridiculous. You couldn't make this stuff up.
You can't make it up.
Can you imagine inviting, like, I know they're not doing it at the White House, they're doing it at the country club, but can you imagine inviting like the top 25 wallets to a dinner? So the top 25 people that we told first that stole the most money get to have dinner with us, so that the next time we do this, you could maybe be one of the top 25 or 50.
And maybe we'll hook you up with a little tax action, a little government contract action, a little, something of some material value to you and your enterprise.
Yet 99.
Maybe will you scratch my back, and then maybe I'll scratch yours, if you know what I'm saying.
Yet 99.99% of the people that bought that coin lost money. And then his wife's coin was even worse than that. It's like basically 99. It's 5 nines. Everybody lost money, but she doesn't give a crap because she couldn't care one. Doesn't care one bit.
Had the Haktua people, didn't the Haktua people lose their money too?
Oh, everybody lost their money to Haktua coin. Everybody, I assume. Maybe one person made money. I don't know. But that girl's never going to be, I mean, I don't know if you'll ever see her again or whatever. She'll have different color hair.
Can't imagine
somewhere
she'll
else.
be seen.
Melania Trump, you're going to put her on a pedestal, somehow, some stupid reason.
But there was a time when all these the thing that's perplexing for me was there was a time, so I've mentioned this before, but my very first job as an intern at Merrill Lynch, when I was still an undergraduate, was to work. I worked in the compliance department at Merrill Lynch. This is pre-computer. And they had files and files at the World Financial Center and at 2 Broadway, both in New York, full of prospectuses.
Yeah.
Bond prospectuses.
You don't need those prospectuses
layers
anymore.
of bonds, layers of, it's a document, piece of paper. IPO, secondary, convertible, senior support, it never ends. You speak out 1,000 words for 1,000 ways to get money, okay? And the big thing, I got this big speech, they could still smoke in the office. You see how old, there's like people are still smoking in the office. And I'm sitting in some big financial executive, I forget his name, but he's like, the worst thing you could do is sell somebody a dream or an idea, but there's no company. It's called Blue Sky. And that's why he's like, that's why we have blue sky laws, because you can't sell a piece of blue sky you can't sell a bridge in Brooklyn you don't own. This is capitalism, for dummies. I mean, this is the very most basic thing of like markets, right? Like, if I'm going to sell you a refrigerator magnet, at the very least, it should actually be a refrigerator magnet. It can't just be a promise of a refrigerator magnet. And now with this whole crypto scams world, the Hawk-Tuah scams, which the Trumps are running their Hawk-Tuah scam and Melania's got her Hawk-Tuah scam, there must be hundreds of these things. I don't understand how it's legal. I'll tell you how it's legal.
Like, you fire all the people that said
to sell a false
it's easy.
IPO.
You fire all the people that said it wasn't legal. Why is that so hard to understand? It used to not be legal. Then you get rid of everybody that said it wasn't legal. And now all of a sudden there's nobody left to say it's not legal. It's not that hard to figure out.
So now anybody can create a meme coin that is a meaningless nothing and collect money.
There's hundreds of thousands created every day. I think it's maybe 1 million created every day, but it doesn't matter because you can't get them listed anywhere. Anybody, you could probably do it. You could have AI create one for you.
So I could do a Dylan coin, but no one would buy it and no one would even know it exists because I couldn't get it listed.
You can't, nobody would know it exists.
Whereas you're saying if I'm Trump, I can get it listed and I have the bullhorn to sell it. And that's what the difference is between the Dylan coin or the Tom coin and the Trump coin.
If Dylan Radigan wanted to get your meme coin listed, at the very least, you would have to write a $10 million check to somebody. Now, when I say somebody, I'm talking about like Coinbase, some exchange, Binance, crypto.com.
Somebody's going to want something.
For $10 million, you could probably get your coin listed. And then you got to create enough bullshit hype around it to clear
that hurdle.
To hope that somebody does it, and then you're still on a list of one of X number of hundreds or thousands of coins out there, and you're probably not going to get anybody to bite. But if you could create some kind of virality, maybe you can get somebody to bite. Other than that, there's nothing to do. So you're really limited to one of the few people who can create who has $10 million to spend to get your coin listed.
And then the ability to sell it and promote it. And then in the case of this case, this guy has the ability to regulate it.
Well, if you're the president of the free world or the president of the United States, yes, you can say I'm listing a coin, and all of a sudden they'll list the coin for you. Because if you don't list the coin, if you're Coinbase, you don't list the coin, then they shut you down. And so
they probably waive the fee.
Exactly. Of course they waive the fee. In fact, they pay you. It's not even that. Coinbase donated a crap load of money. So did Ripple. So did Tether. Everybody donated all the money because that's essentially what Trump said. All you crypto firms, I think it was something like $50 or $80 million. You give me $50 or $80 million. A, I'll get rid of the regulators. And 2, you have to list my coins. And that's what happened. Like, anybody that doesn't have a problem with that, I don't even understand. How could you not have an issue with that? And then what's even worse is
extension of the existing culture. It's just the next. It's like a flying car. It's like a driverless car.
That wasn't enough for these grifters. Then they said, "Hey, you know what? That's not enough. Now we're going to create a stable coin, okay? And the stable coin is going to be backed dollar for dollar with U.S. treasuries. Sure. But nobody can find one thing. Nobody can see where any of it's collateralized with anything. Okay. But yeah, don't worry, it's collateralized. And then we're going to scrape $300 or $400 million off the top of that thing. I mean, the grift is it's unbelievable. There's nothing ever been like it anywhere. I can't say anywhere in the world because I think Putin is his role model, and Putin stole whatever, $200 billion or whatever he stole. I mean, all these guys.
But don't you think
dead.
the Trumps or the Trump family are also front running all these tariff announcements? Sure.
No. They're not smart enough.
They could have made $1 trillion in the last month just on Liberation Day. Then the pause.
You see,
now we're talking to China.
No, they're technically they're not smart enough because they don't really understand how markets work. But the other side to that is they know that in the listed marketplace, okay, everything is
that they can be found, that they're visible.
There's too much transparency. Yeah, you can't get away with that. So that makes no sense. That's just a give back. Don't worry about that. That's nothing. They don't care about that. That's
There's no reason to front run the tariff news on a day-to-day basis.
Why would you front run the tariff news when you can create a coin to be worth a few $1 billion overnight you don't need the stupid tariff news. The tariff news is just how you repay your friends on Wall Street. You don't need that to create. You create $2 billion just by launching a coin.
But you tell your buddies ahead of time in New York, so they get to make a couple nickels on the side.
Probably not even. They probably don't even get it. Probably not worth it. Like yesterday. I mean, really, how much could you jumped on it? It's not that big a deal. I don't think the listed markets are. I think the listed markets have been destabilized, but I don't think the listed markets have been compromised.